Hello everybody, welcome to another news roundup, taking a look at some brand new information surrounding the worlds of Pixar. In my last video I said I would only be back with one of these if something crazy happened, and one of these headlines certainly is, though there's a few more topics that I think are well worth going over here today. First off, Toy Story 5. This film is just around the corner at this point, honestly, now under a year out. We know a fair amount about it, a lot more than Hoppers, and we can only expect for info to ramp up, as Pixar is very much relying on the success of this film. The news for this hasn't been the most grand since my other news videos, but I did uncover something that I'm not sure anyone else cares about, but I figured that here would be the best platform to discuss it. In a new paper published by the research and development team at Pixar's RenderMan, they were showcasing some of the tech and improvements to software with a new rewrite in their code with RenderMan XPU. There's a lot of information here. It goes super in depth on tech that I wish I knew more about, but presented in their article was an image that isn't something I've seen before. Here is a fully rendered image of Jessie on Bonnie's bed looking over some of the other toys in typical leader Woody fashion, and for it coming from an article about the new rendering process, it makes sense for this to be a fully rendered still from the film. This isn't unheard of since they just showed the full opening scene to press and Annecy last week. But I will put it out there that this may just be a test. I just think that would be a bit weird at this point, so until we hear otherwise, this is the first official still from the upcoming feature, and there's some interesting things going on here. We have Buttercup, Rex, Ham, Dolly, Mr. Pricklepants, and most interestingly, the aliens. But there's 5 of them this time, and this is where I start to question this. Everything else here makes perfect sense, so this very well could be placeholders or something of the like, but let's just go on the foundation that this is really from the film from this point on. This means that Bonnie went to Pizza Planet, I suppose, and she's not half bad at the claw. But honestly, why add more aliens, you might ask? For one, it'll probably be a great addition of additional comedic relief, the more the merrier. But also for branding purposes, they can have 5 little green men representing the 5 films of the franchise. Also, the aliens have become their own kind of Pixar mascot in the last few years. They had a lot of merchandise where the aliens would dress up like other Pixar characters. Disney must see them as one of the most marketable designs in the franchise, even despite them being relatively minor. Again, if this is real, I think it's pretty fun. I'm sure people will find a way to complain, but that's par for the course. The toys themselves would probably never be able to distinguish, but I don't think they'd care too much. The next topic is a somber one, but hey, we gotta look into it, and it's Elio's current box office. Mind you, we're just about 5 days into the gross being reported right now, but I'm gonna go off the headlines we've gotten, and I'm sure many of you seen it's not looking too great. At 20.8 million, it's the lowest opening weekend for any Pixar movie here domestically, and while Day to Day hasn't been an awful carryover, they started out so low even compared to Elemental, which was able to lag out. The film has a few more weeks to trickle out to a few more markets, but for now they're really hoping for a strong word of mouth, which I'm hoping it sees. You all know I want to see this succeed, as I love the film and so did so many others. And it has quite good reviews, critics and audiences. It really seems as though original features at Pixar still aren't safe despite Elemental coming back, and I'm sure the marketing teams at Disney are questioning the next best move for Hoppers and Gato. I plan on covering in the future the impact of Disney Plus, but I think it really can't be argued that it has had a lingering effect on films like Elio. Hopefully the next weekend drop for Elio isn't above 40% here domestically. It won't have any direct competition until Smurfs next month, so there is some hope, but it's unfortunate many have already written it off. I really hope Disney doesn't move Pixar out of that June release spot for the future, though there was some harsh competition this year with Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, with friendly fire from Stitch there. Toy Story 5 will fare better next year, but they really should delay that Moana live action. It's silly having them so close. Originals performing like this is why Pixar has resorted to producing a heavier output of franchise content, as the sequels have been bringing in the big bucks. Pete Docter recently stated yet again they plan on doing an original followed by one of these sequels to ensure the gambles they take on these original feature budgets can be recouped by these highly profitable productions. And you've seen the title, you may have seen it talked about online. We have rumors now discussing a follow-up to Ratatouille. This is a headline I could not pass up. It's the main reason I got on here today, so I want to cover where it's coming from, what I think of it, and what I think all of you think of it. And I guess where I think the story could go. This is coming from a podcast featuring a well-known leaker, Jeff Snyder, who, to my knowledge, has never leaked anything Pixar related. Flashback to the Ducks musical last year, everybody. Like the leaker of that one, he has a decent track record going over all sorts of productions, though the most popular leaks of his come from Marvel. That seems to be the case for all of these scoopers, though. Even in the podcast, though, he said that a source of his denied the film being in the works, though it was something looming around a while back. And as the conversation continues, it really just ends up sounding like an educated guess. Based on the way these sequels are conceptualized, it's got to be close to impossible that there has never been any talks about the sequel at any point in time. Just monetarily speaking, the original film grossed over $600 million back in 2007, with inflation putting that at over $900. Disney saw with Inside Out and Moana last year how much the grosses of the originals could go up with a sequel, which is something Pixar already saw with other long-awaited sequels in years past. Ratatouille has become one of the most beloved offerings in Pixar's already beloved catalog, with it getting even more of a resurgence in recent years, so I could definitely see this going over $1 billion at the worldwide box office. Some Disney parks also have a Ratatouille attraction, and Disney loves the continuation of these multimedia properties, hence a lot of these live-action remakes. Many online are not so happy about this rumor, not really looking at the source of it either. You see more Pixar sequel hate, claims the original ended perfectly, and that this one would ruin it. I will outright state that I don't think this is actually in the works right now, because with Coco 2 being 2029, this is so far in the future. Not that films past that aren't in early development right now even. I just don't think we'd be hearing about it even as a rumor. The scooper themselves didn't even hear about this recently, so it really doesn't seem like the most likely statement. I'll give my little hot take though. Before I looked at the full source of the leak, I was pretty excited actually. Unlike a lot of animation and Pixar fans, I love both originals and sequels pretty equally. I love the world building Pixar does and the characters they introduce us to, and I love when they expand upon them more and we can live in those worlds again when they decide to return. Returning to the world of Ratatouille over 20 years later would actually be crazy. It'd be the longest gap between sequels for the studio thus far, and I'd be interested in seeing how these characters would look with updated graphics, how Paris would look with the studio's newer lighting, and perhaps, most importantly, what food they'd decide to showcase this time around. Like many others, I also believe the first film had a perfect ending. But I believe with Pixar sequels, they continue the story forward, but also stand on their own as their own piece of art. I feel that with the way that Ratatouille ended, there would have to be a totally different tone brought into a sequel, because Remy has been introduced to this world already. And unfortunately, with the passing of a few actors who voice some main characters, there could be some concern that the identity of the franchise would shift too much. I spent a while trying to think of how I would follow up the original film a few years back, and I came up with so many options. The best one I thought of is Remy on some sort of Iron Chef knockoff. I just think that one would be funny. I could see them playing into the metaphor of artistry for Remy though, and how an accomplished individual in the field can still struggle. I do know that if I can think of a few ideas, the artists at Pixar can surely think of more. And while I don't have any concrete reason to believe this film to be real at the moment, I would not be opposed to it. That does it for another news roundup. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I love discussing all things Pixar. Please let me know what you think about any of these topics, especially Ratatouille 2. That one I could talk about for hours, but yeah, I really don't think it's happening anytime soon. I think the Monsters Inc. sequel is before it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a whole lot, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.